The Nintendo Switch has been extremely influential for not only Nintendo, but the gaming industry as a whole. There was just something so revolutionary about the idea of a handheld hybrid system that you could play on your TV and then seamlessly switch, get it, to playing in handheld mode. As of writing this video, the Nintendo Switch has crossed the 8-year milestone, which is pretty surreal to say because I was alive and aware when the Switch launched. Oh man, do I feel old. This 8th year of the Nintendo Switch is also quite monumental, as on January 16th, 2025, the highly rumored and anticipated successor to the Nintendo Switch was revealed and given the name Nintendo Switch 2. How clever of them. The Nintendo Switch has played such a big role in my life and the gaming industry. I would never have been able to experience as many games as I have and become the enthusiast that I am without the Nintendo Switch. Thus, in honor of the Switch and the end of an era, I want to go back and highlight my experience with the Nintendo Switch over the last 8 years of its life and remember all the great times I've had with the console. The Nintendo Switch was revealed to the world, or at least here in the States, on October the 20th, 2016, and later on in January of 2017, Nintendo held a live presentation showing off the console, Joy-Cons, games, everything you needed to know about the Switch was at this event. This is when my memories with the Switch pre-launch start kicking in. My family was staying in the great state of Texas for the month of February, and I have very clear memories of watching the Nintendo Treehouse hands-on footage of the Switch and various games and being just infatuated with the Switch. I remember being just insufferable about the console and games to my parents the entire time we were in Texas. The Nintendo Switch launched on March 3rd, 2017, and as most modern video game launches have been, it was hit with a shortage. I was pretty determined to get a Switch, so every time we went to a store, we would check in and ask. Finally, me and my family went to a mall for my 11th birthday. See, I told you I'm old. This mall is special because it has the only Lego store in my state, which is pretty wild, so I always like to go there for my birthday. The mall we were at also had a GameStop. In the GameStop, we actually weren't concerned about the Switch at the time, but one thing that my father would always ask is if they had any of the NES Classic Edition mini consoles. The employee broke the news to my dad that the NES Classic was being discontinued. This was in April of 2017. However, the GameStop employee mentioned to my dad that they had just received a shipment of Nintendo Switches. So right then and there, my parents got me the Nintendo Switch with the caveat that I had to pay them back. It was also convenient that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was releasing that weekend, so I pre-ordered that as well. I remember every penny I earned went to paying off my Switch debt. Whether it was odd jobs or doing childcare, I was working towards paying my parents back. This taught me to have a great work ethic, especially at such a young age. Thus, my journey with the Nintendo Switch began. Because every dollar I made went to paying the system off, I only had one game for quite a while. As mentioned earlier, that game was Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I played Mario Kart 8 Deluxe consistently. I never had a Wii U, so this was my first experience with the game. I played this game so much by myself and with others. I even ended up 100% completing it by like June, and I maybe pulled an all-nighter or two playing it. I crashed pretty hard at my grandma's the next day. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is a very special game to me, and one of my favorites on the Switch. In those first months of having the console, I would subtly try and get my parents to buy a digital game for me like Fast RMX or Namco Museum, but they would never bite. That all stopped that summer though, because Splatoon 2 was about to release. Because of never owning a Wii U, I wasn't able to experience the first game, so I was dead set on getting Splatoon 2 day one. I'll never forget the feeling of like actually pre-ordering games for the first time. Splatoon was also just such a blast. I really got into the multiplayer and participating in the Splatfests and Salmon Run and story mode. I was really into it. Plus, it was a nice break from 3 straight months of Mario Kart. The next big game on my radar was the upcoming Super Mario Odyssey. However, in the time between Splatoon 2's release in July and Mario Odyssey's release in October, I was surprised with one of the most special and influential games I played in the Switch's launch year. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Up to that point, the only Zelda games I had played were the DS games and Ocarina of Time 3D. I had always been aware of Zelda, but didn't have the ability to get the older titles. Breath of the Wild was an eye-opener. It was the first open world game I had played. I had a blast with the story and fooling around in the world. I sank a monumental amount of time into Breath of the Wild. Playing Breath of the Wild and the Switch in general really influenced me to start getting into retro gaming. From that moment on, I was on the hunt for all the Zelda games, a quest I am still on today. My obsession with Breath of the Wild was halted for a period of time as Super Mario Odyssey released in late October of 2017. My favorite game of all time is Super Mario Galaxy 2, so I was extremely excited to see what Nintendo had up their sleeves for the next big 3D Mario game. My tiny little mind was also blown by Super Mario Odyssey. All of the kingdoms were so fun to play in and expertly designed. I also thought the whole wedding thing was humorous. I had just a ton of fun with Super Mario Odyssey. It was also the first midnight launch that I attended, which was so cool for little me. The last game I remember getting in 2017 was Minecraft, although back then it was called Minecraft Nintendo Switch Edition. Minecraft on its own was such an important game in my childhood and even my life now, so just having it playable on the Switch was so cool to me. Playing Minecraft on Switch was how me and my friends played Minecraft the most. It was a great way to connect us all. The Super Mario Mashup Pack was also a huge selling point for me getting it on Switch. I'll probably end up making a whole video on Minecraft specifically because of how important it was and is to me. While I didn't get a ton of games in the Switch's launch year, the games and experiences I had would define the next many years of the console's life, as well as my gaming journey. I also dripped out my Switch with the neon blue Joy-Cons, which were the coolest at the time and honestly still are. This first year of Nintendo Switch had me become a Splatoon fan. It got me way deeper into the Zelda series and started to put me on retro gaming and collecting. Speaking objectively here for a second, the first year of the Switch really set it up for success. Launching with the biggest Zelda game at the time, having Mario Kart and Splatoon in the early months, new creative IPs with ARMS, Snipperclips, and 1-2 Switch, the biggest 3D Mario game to date, and closing out the year with Fire Emblem Warriors and Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Nintendo was firing on all cylinders, probably to make sure the Switch didn't end up like the Wii U. That being said, how did 2018 fare for the Switch? Going into 2018, I was still consistently playing all of the games from the previous year. I do also remember getting Mario and Rabbids and ARMS at the beginning of the year. I don't have too much to say about those were just more or less games I was mildly interested in. At this point in my life, I wasn't super aware of like Nintendo Directs and stuff like that. The only news I was aware of was on the news app on the Switch. That all changed with a certain March Nintendo Direct, which announced one of the biggest wishlist games for me. Super Smash Brothers. I remember the first time I saw that trailer and was dumbfounded by the fact that they actually announced the game that I was hoping and praying for. And the game was releasing that same year too. I was fiending for a new Smash Bros. I had played the ever-living beans out of Brawl on the Wii and Smash for 3DS. After seeing that trailer on the news app, I had to make sure I watched every Nintendo Direct from that moment on. Doing a little rewind here, in January of 2018, an interesting trailer graced my eyes. It was for games where you build cardboard contraptions and play games with them. The games I'm referring to are Nintendo Labo. Essentially, they were kits you would buy and then you would build, what Nintendo called Toy-Con, out of cardboard, and then play other games with the Toy-Con. Now, I'm not the most crafty person in the blockchain, but something about Nintendo Labo really appealed to me. Nintendo Labo had a release date of late April, right around my birthday, so I pretty much begged and pleaded with my family to get it for me. They did because I'm just that insufferable. There were two kits at release. The Variety Kit, which came with a bunch of builds and mini-games, and the Robot Kit, which you would build a robot that you would wear, and the game was pretty much Godzilla, but robot. I went with the Variety Kit as that looked the most fun to me. I did have a fun time building it, and the mini-games were cool for a little bit. There was a piano you could play, a motorcycle you could race, and some other like mini game-esque things. Most of the fun came from building the contraptions. It was fun for a couple weeks, but now they just sit and rot in my closet. The really neat thing that came from Labo was the garage mode, which pretty much let you design your own mini games. There were some crazy games people made with this. I was never skilled enough to use it properly. Nintendo Labo was a cool idea that used the Switch's unique features, but didn't have a lot of lasting power. Also announced in January and released in the spring was Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. I had a lot of fantastic memories playing Donkey Kong Country Returns on the Wii, and to have the opportunity to play the sequel that I never got to play was really exciting. My brother got this game because he played Returns religiously, and it's funny because I actually ended up beating the game way before him. This was the trend with a lot of the Switch's library, as Wii U games were getting ported over to the Switch for a new life and a second chance. I was never upset by this because it was my chance to experience these games for the first time. After Labo and Donkey Kong, nothing big caught my interest for games. I was still dying for more info on Super Smash Bros. For the Switch. Luckily, E3 was just around the corner. For some reason, whenever E3 would come around, I was always up north with no internet. But where there's a will, there's a way. I had to know if anything Smash Bros. Was announced at E3. While we were at a beach, in a moment of disparity, I managed to get my dad's phone and used his 1 bar of cellular data to watch what little of the direct I could. It was at this moment I exclaimed loudly, "Everyone is here!" It was at E3 2018 that Super Smash Bros. Ultimate was fully unveiled. The biggest and most insane Smash Bros. Ever, delivered to me on a silver platter on December 7th. After that 25-minute segment, the only thing on my mind was Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Also announced at E3 was that Fortnite was coming to the Switch, which ended up playing the same role Minecraft did, a game to play with friends. Smash Bros. Ended up consuming my mind. The only parts of 2018 I actively remember was Captain Toad in July, a Smash Direct in August, the Nintendo Labo Vehicle Kit in September, and another Smash Direct in November. Everything was just a pre-game before Smash came out. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate released. Ultimate was packed full of so much content. I was pretty much obsessed with this game until the last content update in 2021. I played so many matches with friends and against CPUs. I still to this very day am nowhere close to completing the spirits. Not only was playing with friends keeping me hooked on the game, but the steady release of DLC characters too. I closed out 2018 playing an ungodly amount of Super Smash Bros. And Super Mario Party, which I got for Christmas. Looking back objectively at 2018, it wasn't as big as the previous year. This year was mainly filled with Wii U ports, Nintendo Labo, and Super Smash Bros., as well as the launch of Nintendo's paid online service, Nintendo Switch Online, which at the time I was annoyed that they did, but is what the rest of the industry was doing. Plus the blow was softened at the low price in the included NES games. This year also marked the first mainline home console Pokemon games, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. I didn't get into Pokemon until much later, so these didn't do much for me. I was going into 2019, well, obsessed with Super Smash Bros. I was mostly anticipating the DLC characters. I knew that Joker from Persona 5 was on the way, but there was no release date for him. The only games in 2019 that were on my radar was a new Animal Crossing that was announced for 2019, and a port of New Super Mario Bros. U for the Switch. Now, I really loved New Super Mario Bros. Wii and was patiently waiting for Nintendo to make a New Super Mario Bros. For the Switch. When New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe was announced, I was disappointed that it wasn't a new game, but was at least happy I could experience it for the first time, especially with my family. I actually ended up really enjoying this game and ended up 100% completing New Super Mario Bros. U. I still have to work on New Super Luigi though. February 2019 was what really kicked off the year for me. Would you believe that they cold opened a Nintendo Direct with Super Mario Maker 2? I remember being in shock over that. Super Mario Maker for the Nintendo 3DS was a game I put a lot of time into, but was always disappointed in its limitations. I had always been secretly wishing for a port of the Wii U version, but a sequel? Well, a sequel was much better in my eyes. Unfortunately, I had to wait until June. I'm not gonna lie, that was brutal. Then they ended the Direct with the announcement of a full-blown remake of The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. I was also extremely excited for this, slated for just a blanket 2019. Yeah, Mario Maker took priority in my brain. Thankfully, in April, Joker dropped in Super Smash Bros., so that distracted me a bit. Super Mario Maker 2 was a godsend when it released in June. Me and my family were in the process of moving, and there were a bunch of renovations needed to make the house livable, so there were days where I was at the house just playing Mario Maker. I would have been cooked for real if Mario Maker released any other time. The game also helped with my mental state. At the time, I was extremely against change and did not support the move. The game helped me keep my mind off all the changes happening around me, and I am happy to say that I openly endorse change now. E3 that year brought some epic announcements. The show started off with Hero from Dragon Quest joining Smash. The next generation of Pokemon got more inflow. Fire Emblem Three Houses got a release date. So did Link's Awakening and Luigi's Mansion 3. And to end it all off, Banjo and Kazooie were also joining Smash as well. And there was the surprise reveal of the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I was speechless after that. A sequel to one of my favorite games in my favorite series? My patience was truly tested. 2019 also brought with it the announcement and release of a revision to the Switch itself, the Nintendo Switch Lite. The Nintendo Switch Lite is a smaller and handheld only version of the Nintendo Switch. When it was announced, the Lite never spoke to me. I liked my regular Switch, so I never felt the need for the Lite. However, the Lite ended up being great for my mother and sister. The same day the Lite came out, Link's Awakening also released, September 20th. I'm gonna come out and say it right now, I love the little toy chibi art style in Link's Awakening. It just looks so pretty and works so well in the context of it being an old Game Boy game. I do really love Link's Awakening. The world is so great and fun to explore. I remember getting to the final boss of the game and then putting it down. I don't know why. I ended up beating it like a year or two later. 1 month later, Luigi's Mansion 3 released. On Halloween, coincidentally. I enjoyed Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, Luigi's Mansion 2 in other parts of the world, and was pretty excited for the third game. Luigi's Mansion 3 is probably the most beautiful looking game on the Switch. I was blown away by the visuals. The game was pretty fun too. I closed out 2019 playing a lot of Mario Maker and Fortnite. Fortnite was a huge part of my 2019 as well. Looking at 2019 objectively again, this was a pretty great year. Mario Bros, Mario Maker, Fire Emblem, Zelda, Luigi's Mansion, Pokemon Sword and Shield, plus plenty to look forward to in the future. This was almost on par with the peak of 2017. However, this was the last year before the Switch started to show its age. I hate to bring this year up, but do y'all remember 2020? The way the year started should have been an omen for the rest of the year. 2020 started with Byleth from Fire Emblem Three Houses being the 5th DLC character for Smash Bros, which was such a letdown. I really wanted Waluigi. At least a second set of DLC characters were announced, but still. At least we got more info about Animal Crossing New Horizons, which was now releasing March 20th. The same day as Doom Eternal. Animal Crossing New Horizons was a godsend to the entire world. I'm sure I don't need to mention what world event happened in 2020. Animal Crossing and gaming in general was one of the few things that I and many others were able to do while stuck in our homes. For me, Animal Crossing was a daily event. Every day I'd wake up, get coffee, and do my dailies in Animal Crossing. Shutdown aside, Animal Crossing New Horizons in general is a great game. I really enjoyed building up my island and interacting with my villagers. I played every single day for the entirety of 2020. Looking at it now, it does lack a lot of content and charm that New Leaf had. Nevertheless, it was still a really fun game and a really fun way to connect with friends, especially while we were stuck inside. After Animal Crossing, barely any games were announced, let alone released. We did get a direct mini with some things, notably an ARMS character for Smash Brothers and Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, which I didn't care about at the time. I remember Paper Mario the Origami King being announced on Twitter and then released a month later. I do have a special spot in my heart for Paper Mario the Origami King though, as it was my first Paper Mario game, and I really enjoyed it. 2020 also doubled as Mario's 30th anniversary, and we got a special Nintendo Direct for that. The two big ones I cared about in this Direct was Super Mario 3D World getting ported to the Switch, which, whoa, who could have seen that coming? They did tack on a new side story, Bowser's Fury, so that was pretty neat. Also announced was Super Mario 3D All-Stars, which was a collection of Super Mario 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy. This was really cool until the controversy started. Yeah, these games had bare bones emulation, no Galaxy 2, and an expiration date of March 31st, 2021. It was still nice to have these games on Switch, but at what cost? I still bought it day one and completed 64 in Galaxy. The last game that released in 2020 that I cared about was Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Now, I was always aware of the first Hyrule Warriors, but never played it. When this was announced in a partner showcase, I was actually hyped as it was a prequel to Breath of the Wild. Turns out it was non-canon, but I had a really good time with this game. The Warriors games are so fun just to turn your brain off and mow down hordes of enemies. Well, as many enemies the Switch could render. My 2020 was pretty much dominated by Animal Crossing and Minecraft. I got back into Minecraft big time this year. Objectively, 2020 was the weakest year for Switch releases, but not like people playing Switch. Console and software sales, especially digital games, were very high because people had nothing to do but play games. Even though there weren't a ton of releases, the ones we got were still pretty good. This was also the first year that I remember the Switch Pro rumors being everywhere. Surely 2021 had to be better, right? Honestly, 2021 felt better than 2020 at least. I was still playing Animal Crossing almost daily and also still playing a lot of Minecraft. The big thing for me at the start of this year was Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, which I was really excited to jump into for the first time, as well as experiencing Bowser's Fury. This is a port that I was anticipating to come, so to finally have it was great. The game itself is just one of the best Mario games. In the first half of this year, there was a bunch of games that were cool, but I just wasn't too interested in. February had a Nintendo Direct that had announcements for Pyra and Mythra joining Smash Bros. And The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD. I mainly cared about those special Joy-Cons though. Since day one, I've been craving a Zelda Special Edition Switch or Pro Controller or just something, so I was very excited to get these Joy-Con. I was really looking forward to what Nintendo had up their sleeves for E3 this year in particular, due to how lackluster 2020 was, and the two really big things that I got from this E3 Direct was Kazuya from Tekken joining Smash Bros. And Metroid Dread getting announced. 2021 was really the year I started to not be able to keep up with the newest releases financially. So like Skyward Sword HD came out in July, and I didn't get it right away. One of the biggest things that happened over the summer for me was I played my first Pokemon game. I was at a retro game store and saw Pokemon Sword, and I had been really interested in Pokemon, so I finally just took the plunge and I had a great time with the game. Pokemon Sword really started to introduce me to turn-based RPGs, which has become one of my favorite types of genres. Another big thing that happened was the announcement of another hardware revision to the Nintendo Switch, the Nintendo Switch OLED model. A Switch Pro had been rumored consistently since 2020, and this had seemed to be it. However, the Switch OLED didn't offer any upgrades in hardware, just upgrading the screen and a couple other features like the kickstand and dock. At the time of the OLED model's announcement, my 2017 model Switch was really starting to show its age, and I was excited to upgrade to a newer system with a better screen and battery, and that slick white color as well. On the same day the OLED model launched, Metroid Dread also launched, and I was equally as excited for this game. This was my first Metroid game, and this was the perfect introduction to the Metroidvania style of games for me. Looking back, the whole month of October was pretty big. The last DLC character for Smash dropped, being Sora from Kingdom Hearts. I attribute my intense love for the Kingdom Hearts series to Sora joining Smash Bros. I do have a video about this I will shamelessly plug here. I was also able to finally pick up The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD, which I'm just gonna say now, Skyward Sword has never been my favorite Zelda game, and I was willing to give it another shot here with the HD version on the Switch, and with all the improvements they made, I like it a little more than I did before. It's definitely not my least favorite Zelda game. That would go to Zelda 2. This is the best version to play if you do like this game. To round out the end of the year, I was pretty obsessed with Animal Crossing's Happy Home Paradise DLC. That pretty much summed up my 2021. I did enjoy all the new and old games that I played this year, as well as being able to upgrade to the newest hardware. Looking back at the year objectively, it was certainly better than 2020, although it was also apparent by the amount of releases that 2020 had affected a lot of games. We still did get some great releases and a console revision, and I'm gonna say it here and now, y'all can fight me in the comments, I actually like Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Hopefully you didn't click off this video after that controversial take, because now it's time to talk about 2022. 2022 was a bad year for me personally, so I was really leaning on gaming and the Switch to get me through. The year kicked off with a game that I was really excited for and had some high hopes. That game being Pokemon Legends Arceus. Legends Arceus pushed the Pokemon franchise in many new directions, with capturing Pokemon in real time, explorable open areas, faster combat, and much more. I really got into Legends Arceus, more so than Sword. I really vibed with the traditional Japanese style of the game, the gameplay loop, and the story. I also really appreciated that there was only one version released instead of the dual release. That way, I could actually complete the Pokédex. I still haven't though. In the first few months of 2022, I was able to snag a PS5, so most of my extra cash went to buying PlayStation games. So I wasn't really grabbing the newest releases from the spring, like Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I did, however, grab Nintendo Switch Sports, as that came out around my birthday, and I had really high expectations for the game, and it ended up being just alright. It's a quality game with a lack of content and none of the charm the Wii Sports games had. Eventually the game got updates, but it was too little, far too late. Midway through the summer, I got my first big boy job at a grocery store and was now flush with cash to spend on whatever I so desired. And the first game I decided to spend my riches on was Live A Live. You may be asking yourself, what is Live A Live? Live A Live is an HD 2D remake of a Japanese exclusive Super Nintendo game made by Square Enix. The trailers for it looked really interesting and I was sold on the graphics. I can confidently say that the game is good. It's good. I definitely need to give more time to it, but the time I spent with it was pretty solid. I'm not gonna lie, I was buying so many games in 2022 that I legitimately forgot all of the Switch stuff I was getting. This was actually a really bad thing, as not only was I being extremely financially irresponsible, but I wasn't playing a lot of the games I would get, and therefore I wasn't really connecting with the games, thus making them not as special of experiences. This went on for the latter half of 2022. I did pick up Splatoon 3 at launch and was really trying to get into it, but put it down after a couple of weeks. Nothing to do with the game's quality or amount of content. It just got buried in the amount of games I was getting. I was, however, really able to connect with the Final Fantasy series through the Switch port of 7. Let's just say that from that moment on, I was a dedicated Final Fantasy fan. The final nail in the coffin for 2022 was the release of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I was really hoping that these games were going to turn out great, even though the trailers said otherwise. Yeah, it turns out the first Pokemon generation where I bought both games ended up being one of the worst. I was really burned by Scarlet and Violet. I don't think I need to specify why. I really did try to finish and like this game, but I couldn't. Gaming was probably the only part of 2022 that I actually enjoyed. I really did like most of the games I was able to play on Switch. Not you. Personal issues aside, 2022 was a really great year for the Switch, on par with the pre-2020 years. There was 2 Pokemon games, a new 3D Kirby, Nintendo Switch Sports, a new Fire Emblem Warriors, Peak Noblade Chronicles 3, Mario Kart 8 DLC, Splatoon 3, Bayonetta 3, wow, a lot of threes, and a Mario plus Rabbids sequel. This year was packed for the Switch and still showed that it had a lot of life in it. Thankfully, 2023 was a better year personally, and a really great year for the Switch. Fire Emblem Engage kicked off the year, and I didn't get it until Black Friday that year, actually. The real bombshell for me was at the beginning of the year was the surprise drop of Metroid Prime Remastered, which I was sold on because I loved Dread so much. My patience was truly tested with this game though, as the digital version released the day it was announced, and the physical copy would drop 2 weeks later. I was truly torn between playing it right away digitally or waiting. Alas, I stuck to my guns and held out for my physical copy, and I'm glad I did. Something I cannot say for the release of the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster Collection, which locked its physical version behind a very limited collector's edition paywall. Thanks, Square Enix. I was foaming at the mouth for these games, so I swallowed my pride and bought them digitally, only for them to do a retail physical release a year later. My regrets were cut in half because the Pixel Remaster Collection is brilliant and feels right at home on the Switch, and were games I played a lot throughout the year. Everything at the beginning of 2023, however, was pre-game for the monumental and highly anticipated release of I can't put into words how excited I was for Tears of the Kingdom. As I said earlier in this video, Breath of the Wild was a defining game in my life, and I was so ready to have my life altered again by Tears of the Kingdom. I got as much as I could for the release of this game. I got the Special Edition Switch OLED, the Special Edition Pro Controller, the Link Amiibo, but not the Collector's Edition of the game though? I don't even know why I didn't. I actually have a really special memory on the day that Tears of the Kingdom released, as I attended the midnight launch for the game while on vacation in Tennessee. It was definitely a night I won't ever forget. My summer that year was pretty much filled with Tears of the Kingdom. I skipped everything that released that summer because I was grinding Tears of the Kingdom and Final Fantasy 16. But that was on PS5, and we're not talking about that. While Tears of the Kingdom did end up being a really awesome and hype game, it still doesn't compete with Breath of the Wild's place in my heart. I finally beat Tears of the Kingdom just in time for Super Mario Bros. Wonder to release. As I mentioned earlier, I was fine with the release of New Super Mario Bros. U on the Switch, but I was really wanting a new 2D Mario game for the console. And Wonder was exactly what I and 2D Mario needed. Super Mario Bros. Wonder was jam-packed with some of the most creative and detailed levels and worlds ever seen in a 2D Mario game. I think I laughed more playing this game than any other Mario game. I think Wonder also wins the award for the fastest Mario game I've completed. I was so impressed where this game took 2D Mario. I genuinely have no idea how they can top this. The last title I was super excited for was the Super Mario RPG remake. I don't think a single soul saw a Mario RPG remake coming. This game really spoke to me as it had the same developer as the classic Final Fantasy games, and to have a modern way to play what is basically a Mario Final Fantasy game was very exciting. I had a lot of fun with this year's releases, especially Tears of the Kingdom and Mario Wonder. I was in a better mental and financial state this year, so I was actually able to slow down and connect with these games. Objectively speaking, you could put 2023 up against 2017 for the best year of Nintendo Switch. You had a brand new 2D Mario game, a new 3D Zelda, Pikmin 4, a new Fire Emblem, and Detective Pikachu Returns. Plus, some great remakes like Advanced Wars, Mario RPG, and Kirby's Return to Dreamland. There was something for everyone this year, very similar to the Switch's launch year. With 2023 being such a packed year, 2024 seemed to be the final year of the Switch, and that was supported by the release schedule for the first half of the year. The first half of the year was filled with remakes and remasters, with a couple of smaller titles as well. The biggest of the remasters being Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. This was a pretty bombshell announcement when it was revealed the previous year. I spent an unholy amount of money on the original GameCube release, so I did not pick this game up upon release. The only title I actually grabbed from the first half of this year was Princess Peach Showtime. I thought it was a neat idea to give Peach her own game, especially considering that it had been 18 years since her last game. I had high hopes for this game, but after playing, I was kind of disappointed. It just wasn't a game for me. My little sister and a friend of mine liked it more than I did, so I guess it's just a me issue. I probably would have had more fun if the performance and visual quality was better. Here's hoping that Switch 2 will fix it. One game that I started this spring was Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. I had been super intrigued by the Xenoblade games and got Xenoblade Chronicles 3 when the Zelda OLED Switch came out, and after playing an hour of 3, I decided I needed to start at the beginning. Summing up the almost year-long experience I had with Xenoblade 1, this game was altering. I was altered after playing it, in a good way. Xenoblade 1 easily made it into my top 10 games of all time. Over the summer, I didn't bother with Luigi's Mansion 2 HD or Nintendo World Championships NES Edition. I'm not gonna pay $60 for the map port of Linguini's Mansion 2, and I'm still considering the Nintendo World Championships, but only if I can find the big box version. It's not high on the priority list. There was one game released in August that I was very intrigued by and actually turned out to be one of my favorites from the year. That game was Emio the Smiling Man Famicom Detective Club. Now, I've never been a visual novel guy, but I was always curious about the other Famicom Detective Club games on the Switch, so I decided to test the waters with this game. Yeah, Emio genuinely shocked me. I was really into the storyline. Every chapter got juicier and juicier. I'm not gonna say too much because I do want to make a whole video about it. Shocking sums up Emio the Smiling Man pretty well. Shortly after that, a new top-down Zelda game was set to release, starring Zelda herself, The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. Echoes of Wisdom was very unexpected, as I figured Tears of the Kingdom was going to be the Switch's last Zelda game. I love how it used the Link's Awakening remake art style. I also thought that having Zelda star in her own game was a really neat concept, and I was very fond of the whole Echoes system. It's very unique. My biggest issue with Echoes of Wisdom is the game's performance. Other than that, it was pretty fun. Remember previously in the video when I said that I never really felt like I needed a Switch Lite? Well, alongside the release of Echoes of Wisdom, they also dropped a special edition Hyrule Nintendo Switch Lite that was gold and had the Triforce on it, and it was so beautiful, and of course, being the person that I am, I had to scoop this up. No regrets though. The system is beautiful and I've actually gotten a lot of use out of it, as I'll take it with me to work when I have longer days. The last game I'll talk about from 2024 is Mario & Luigi Brothership. Now, a few years back, the original developers of the Mario & Luigi series, Alpha Dream, shut down. When this happened, it was widely thought that the Mario & Luigi series was dead, donezo, kaput. But lo and behold, Brothership was released. I wasn't sure if I was gonna grab it day one, but Costco had it for a deal, so I said bet. Opinions on this game are mixed. I'm in the camp that really like it. The art style was very unique. I liked it a lot. The story was interesting, albeit a bit slow at the start, and the gameplay was pretty satisfying. I did think the game was a little too long, and the frame skipping was odd. Other than that, I'm a Brothership defender. The first half of 2024 kind of blew for me, but picked up in the second half. At least I was able to catch up on previously released games that I had missed, like Xenoblade Chronicles and Hyrule Warriors. Objectively, you could tell that the Switch was slowing down. A lot of remakes and smaller budget titles. Not a bad thing by any means. That brings us to the current year, 2025. I'm writing this video in April, and so far we've gotten two big first-party releases, both of which I actually played, and follow suit with the previous year. The first being Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. This version is along the same lines as Luigi's Mansion HD, just an HD version of the original, albeit they did add the 3DS content as well. I only bought this game at full price so I could stream it. I did end up having a lot of fun playing it, especially live. It was a nice nostalgia trip. The second game released just recently was Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. While talking about last year, I absolutely glazed the first Xenoblade game, so I had to get this one. This is another Wii U port and one that I figured would eventually come over to the Switch. On the bright side, you can play the entire Xenoblade Chronicles series on the Switch, which is pretty awesome if you ask me. I'm currently playing Xenoblade X, so I haven't formed a full opinion yet, but so far it's pretty fun. I have a video up talking about my first impressions with this game. There's just another shameless plug. Shockingly, at the end of March, we got a full-on Nintendo Direct, which announced the development of new Rhythm Heaven and Tomodachi Life games, which our games fans have been begging for since the launch of the Switch. The only caveat being that both were given a release date of 2026. As of writing this video, the Nintendo Switch 2 has been formally revealed along with a ton of games and given the release date of June 5th, 2025. It appears that Nintendo is still going to support the Switch 1 for a while at least. We still have Metroid Prime 4 Beyond coming this year for this system, as well as a bunch of third-party stuff, so who knows? I guess we'll just have to wait and find out. Well, that brings us to the here and now. Even with the impending launch of the Nintendo Switch 2 on the horizon, it seems like the original Switch will stick around for a little while longer. My life has been forever changed because of the Nintendo Switch. I've experienced so many amazing games, I've connected with family and friends, I've discovered new things about myself and the type of stories and games that I enjoy, I've become a video game collector and retro games enjoyer. It's crazy to think that through everything that's happened to me and the world over the last 8 years, I've always had the Switch to go back to. Well, I'm over the moon excited for the Nintendo Switch 2 and all the fun and enjoyment that will come with it. I will always remember and cherish the Nintendo Switch and its legacy. With that being said, dear Nintendo Switch, thank you.